What's up guys, Humphrey here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're talking about my beginner's guide to personal finance. And the reason I came up with this video is because a lot of you guys will come to me and you'll ask me, hey Humphrey, what should I do with my personal finances at this time of my life? And my answer always varies super widely depending on where you are. If you're still in school, if you're right out of school, maybe you just maybe you just got your first job, or maybe you just got a promotion. It's always going to be a different type of answer. But in this video, I hope to answer all of those with just an overview of my idea of personal finance. And in this overview, there will be 6 different phases that I speak about. And depending on where you are in life, you can probably figure out which phase you're in or which level you're in. Anyway, that's the point of the video. Special thanks to one of my friends. He works at the gym that I go to. Obviously, the gym is closed right now due to the virus that's spreading, but last week, this was a video suggestion by him because he has no idea what he's doing with his finances, and it wasn't taught to him in school, wasn't taught to him by his parents, and I feel a little bit more on the grateful side because my parents taught me all of this stuff, and that way that now I can share it with you guys. That's basically the intro to this video. I'm going to be talking about my beginner's guide to personal finance. Hopefully you learned something from this. If you do have comments about it, please leave a comment for me. Thank you. So without further ado, let's go over to the other room, and that's where we're going to discuss phase 0, which really isn't a phase, but I'm going to call it phase 0 because it's kind of like the starting point. So we're in the other room now, and now we're going to talk about phase 0. And what I think characterizes phase 0 is somebody that's still in school, or maybe they just got out of school and they have no idea what they're doing with their finances. Basically, I think there are 2 really important parts of phase 0. One of the main parts is to secure a credit score, and the other is to build an income. Now, to get a credit score when you have 0 credit, one of the easiest ways to do that is with a secured credit card. I'm going to pull up a few secured credit cards on the screen right now so that you can see. But basically what a secured credit card is that you loan the credit card issuer $200 as collateral so that in case you don't pay your credit card payments, they can take that from you. But that's essentially what it is. You deposit $200 to the credit card issuer, they give you a credit card, you can start spending money as you normally would on a credit card, and that helps you build credit. Once you have a little bit of credit history, I believe it's anywhere from 3, 6, or 9 months, you'll then be able to apply for a normal credit card. The second goal, I think, in phase 0 is to really figure out how to make an income. Whether that's babysitting for 10, 15, 20 bucks an hour, or maybe you're doing some sort of craft or hobby that's paying you on the side, or maybe you just take a job where you're just trading time for money, like some sort of labor job, or maybe you work at a restaurant or you work at a cafe. In any case, any type of income in phase 0 is extremely valuable, and you should be patting yourself on the back for that. So after you've started to make some income and you're starting to build credit, you can slowly start to move to phase 1. So after phase 0, we're going to reach phase 1, and now it finally starts. So in phase 1, you just want to get bare bones self-sufficiency. So what does that mean? It basically means you want to be making more money than you spend, and you want to be minimizing your living expenses as much as you can. It's in this phase that you're probably living paycheck to paycheck. You don't have enough money to move out of your house yet if you're living at home. You might not be able to save that much, but you might be able to save just a little bit of money, like maybe 25 bucks a month, or maybe you can save $50, $100, $200 a month. In any case, one of the major goals, I think, of phase 1 is to start building an emergency fund. For those of you that don't know what an emergency fund is, it's basically 3 to 6 months of living expenses worth of money in a bank account that's never to be touched unless it's for an emergency. So an emergency would be something like a medical emergency. Maybe your car gets totaled just through a random accident or something. You could use that emergency fund for that. But in general, an emergency fund should really not be touched unless it is for an emergency. And it's so important to have this emergency fund because what it does is, especially in phase 1, when you're barely self-sufficient, it'll really give you kind of that mental launch pad to take more risks, especially when it comes to making more income, because you're not really afraid of, say, losing your job. Because if you do lose your job, you have 6 months of expenses to fall back on. It's a lot more comfortable of a position to be in rather than, let's say you lose your job and you don't have anything to fall back on. It's going to just be a really tough situation. So what I recommend is having 6 months of living expenses. So the way to figure that out would be figure out how much you're spending on a monthly basis and just multiply it by 6. If your rent is, say, let's say $1,000 a month and you spend $500 a month on other stuff, like food or utilities like that. I would add those two together, so that'd be $1,500, and we'll multiply it by 6, and that would be the emergency fund that you're looking to save for starting in phase 1. You don't have to complete it in phase 1, but you should start building towards that emergency fund because that's going to give you a lot of flexibility down the road. The other important part of phase 1 is to continue building credit, especially from phase 0 where you started to build credit. Phase 1, you really want to build upon that credit. So what that means is continuing to spend money on a credit card, not a lot of course, but continuing to spend a little bit of money on a credit card every month just to build that credit history, and make sure you're paying that in full every month as well. Same thing with bills. You can continue to do auto pay on your bills, and that'll just help you build your credit history for the long run. So let's say you've been doing phase 0 and phase 1 for a while. You've been continuing to build credit. You started that emergency fund, and maybe you're making a little bit more money now and you're ready for phase 2. Or maybe you've just been saving more money in phase 1. You're ready for phase 2. So phase 2 is mostly a continuation of phase 1. The only difference is in phase 2, you're finishing off that emergency fund, hopefully, that you've already been building upon in phase 1. And number 2, you're paying down high interest rate debt. So if you do have debt, there are a couple different methods to pay it down quickly. One is called the avalanche method, in which you pay off your debt according to how high the interest rate is. The most financially optimal way to pay down debt is the avalanche method. You're paying down the debt that has the highest interest rate in that order, and then you're going down the line. So, if you have a debt with 25% interest rate, you're trying to pay down that debt first, and then you're gonna move on to something with a lower interest rate, like 10, 15%, and so on and so on. The other method is called the snowball method. And in this method of paying down debt, you're paying down debt in the order of its balance size. So you start off with the smallest balance first and you pay that off, and then you go to the next one and you pay that off. So let's say you have a debt of $50 and then a debt of 100 and 150 and then 200. What you want to do is pay off that $50 debt first, no matter what the interest rate is, and then the $100, then the 150, then the 200, and so on and so forth. And the reason you do this is because it provides a really large psychological boost. Imagine having like 10 or 12 different amounts of debt that you owe, but if you knock out the small ones, now all of a sudden you only have 4 left. That's a really big psychological boost and can keep you going, and you maintain that momentum to pay off your debt. It can be somewhat more psychologically motivating than paying down just high interest rate debt, because if you have a really high interest rate large sum of debt, you might feel like you're not making a big enough dent in it over time. So sometimes the snowball method could actually be more preferred by people than the avalanche method. However, we just must remember the financially most optimal way is the avalanche method, but just choose what's right for you. Also in phase 2, we want to start thinking about ways that we can start saving for retirement. So, once you have your emergency fund out of the way, and once you have your high interest rate debt out of the way, you can start thinking about like contributing to an IRA or maybe your company 401k. And we'll talk about that more in phase 3, which is coming up. So phase 3, what characterizes phase 3? Well, let's say you've already built your emergency fund like in phase 2, and you've started to pay down your high interest rate debt. I still think phase 3 is all about finishing off that debt. So if you can get rid of as much debt as you can, or all of it, that's one of the main differences in phase 3 that you're gonna hit. The other big difference in phase 3 is you're gonna start contributing heavily into your retirement accounts, either a 401k, a Roth 401k, an IRA, or a Roth IRA. And if your company matches your contribution, you should definitely be taking advantage of that at every single possible chance that you can get. It's basically free money, guys. In phase 3, you want to make a plan for how you're going to budget your entire income, including saving for retirement. Or perhaps it's saving for another big goal like buying your first house. In any case, hopefully your income has increased enough by now that you can start to budget for these things appropriately, and you can also maintain your living expenses or keep them at a very low amount, because the lower you can keep your expenses at this point, the better off you're going to be for saving for those big goals like your first house or like retirement. So now that you've reached phase 4, I assume by phase 4 you have no debt, your income is increasing so that your retirement accounts are being maxed out every year, and you're starting to build out some other investments for yourself. I think one of the key things in phase 4 to keep in mind is lifestyle inflation, and to keep it as low as possible. I think in phase 4, you should really be focused on how much you're saving, because many of your peers who also might be in phase 4 might just be spending a lot of money. So let's say you're making $10,000 a month, and your friend over there, let's just call him, I don't know, Will, he's making $10,000 a month as well. And Will spends $8,000 a month on just his living expenses, and you're spending only $3,000 a month on your living expenses. Well, the difference there is $5,000, and $5,000 over the course of a year is a $60,000 difference. So even though you guys are making the same salary, you're actually saving way more than Will is, and therefore you're going to be way better off for phase 5 and for the rest of your life. So I would pride yourself on your savings rate, not your income rate in phase 4. And the other thing that you can start to do in phase 4 is to start to build skills that you might need in the future. So what that means is maybe you start to take on more side projects, or maybe you take on more responsibility at work so that you can be more well-rounded in your career and also have different types of opportunities for you later on in life. So phase 5 is here, and phase 5 and beyond, I'm not really too sure what happens in phase 5 because I haven't gotten there yet. But basically in phase 5, what I assume you're going to do is continue to save for those big goals like retirement and buying that first house. Maybe you already have your first house, you want to buy your second house or an income property. You can do that as well. But you're going to be trying to leverage your capital in a way to continue to build your wealth. And in phase 5, you can start to give back. You could have started giving back in any of the phases before that, but I think in phase 5, it is really important to start giving back because basically your personal financial life is pretty much covered by the time you hit phase 5, that giving back can be a large priority in your life at this point. So with that being said, this was my guide to beginner's personal finance, and I hope that you found it helpful. I know that we covered a lot of topics in here. Some of them I glossed over, some of them I went a little bit deeper into. But if this was helpful for you, please let me know, because I'm still trying to figure out what other topics I want to cover, and I think that this was just a very all-inclusive video that I'm going to just send to some of my friends because they're going to ask me inevitably,
hey, what should I do with my finances?
Well, sir, or madam, I just told you. So hopefully you guys learned something from that. Thank you for tuning in to me. I really appreciate it, and I'm going to start uploading, I think, 2 days a week now. It's not a guarantee, but if this video comes out on Friday, then I'll probably do 2. You'll probably see another one on Tuesday. But if this video comes out on Thursday, you'll probably just see 1 a week for at least the next week. So anyway, that was the end of the video. I really appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for your continued support. Let me know what you think in the comments. And okay, see you next time.